Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here's a look at some of the stories we have lined up for you tonight. The government of Alberta starts a conversation on what a nuclear future might look like. Plus, the Prime Minister announces a Polish partnership on his 5-day trip to Europe. And we meet a researcher at Lethbridge Polytechnic whose childhood on the farm is shedding light in the lab.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. The government of Alberta is starting a conversation about what a nuclear future could look like. Government officials have appointed a 5-member panel to engage with people across the province and are launching a public survey to help inform a nuclear energy roadmap for Alberta.
Our expert panelists are well respected in government, academia, industry, and Indigenous government. The panel will engage with different stakeholder groups in Alberta, analyze the results of an online survey, and compile a report based on its findings.
The panel includes Darren Billis, Senior VP of Western Canada for Council Public Affairs, Tim Boston, Principal at Boston Egg Strategies, Inc., Stephen Buffalo, President and CEO of the Indian Resource Council of Canada, Dr. Rudiger Churning, Fellow on Nuclear Law and Policy at the University of Calgary, and Professor Harry Vredenberg, Professor of Strategy and Global Management at the University of Calgary. Each one of these members brings unique expertise and experience, and I look forward to working with each one of them in the months ahead as we embark on an important task of exploring how nuclear energy might power a better, brighter future for our province.
Besides being able to help the province reach decarbonization goals, Premier Smith says nuclear energy will enhance the reliability of the electrical grid, which will impact affordability as well as create jobs and help power new energy-intensive industries and technologies. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada and Poland have agreed to work more closely on defense, aviation, cybersecurity, and clean energy. He's touting their new strategic partnership and wider cooperation with Europe as integral for meeting Canada's goal to quadruple the pace of defense spending by the end of the decade. Carney says Poland is crucial to Ukraine's safety.
As the Prime Minister alluded to a moment ago, Poland is absolutely essential to the defense of Ukraine. 90% of the people and the material transit through Poland. So we're together working side by side in Ukraine, together side by side in NATO, and if I may say, we learn much from the Prime Minister, from his government, including the importance of pulling our full weight in NATO. And it will take us a few years to reach Polish levels of commitment. It's possible. But it's possible. And we have made that commitment. We will quadruple our spending on defense between now and the end of the decade. And to do that right, to do that properly, we need the best partners in partnership with Poland, in aerospace, in other areas, and in partnership with Europe through that intensified defense partnership.
Carney's visit to Warsaw follows a surprise stop in Ukraine, where he didn't rule out sending Canadian troops to Ukraine as part of a possible security guarantee to secure a peace deal in the war with Russia. Defense Minister David McGuinty says the shape of Canada's role in sustaining an eventual peace in Ukraine is still up for discussion.
The Prime Minister was clear yesterday about the question of having Canadian forces on the ground. He said that he wouldn't rule it out, and he was speaking in the context of a whole series of possible responses to continue to provide the assistance that we're providing. That could play, for example, or take the role of more intelligence support, more logistical support, equipment, financial support. We were there yesterday to, for example, review the $2 billion of financial aid that we are making available that was announced at the G7 meeting in Kananaskis, or the $2.5 billion to help the government in its operations, its day-to-day operations. So when he was speaking in the context of a whole series of possibilities.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has ruled out the possibility of his country's soldiers entering Ukraine after the war is over. After his visit to Poland, the Prime Minister moved on to Germany. Carney arrived today at Berlin-Brandenburg Airport as part of his current European mission. It's his fourth European trip since taking office in March, as he moves swiftly on to vow to align Canada closer with Europe, while the relationship with the United States sours under President Donald Trump. Wildfires continue to rage on Canada's east and west coasts. Nova Scotia's largest wildfire has damaged a number of homes in Annapolis Valley. The province says an exact number is unclear at this time as the Long Lake wildfire continues to burn out of control. The blaze has grown to be more than 77 square kilometers. In BC, an air quality warning is in effect for parts of Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley because of smog and wildfire smoke from a blaze that has prompted evacuation alerts in the area. The air quality warnings are expected to last until at least tomorrow. Alberta's capital city is set to be under a sweltering heat wave for the rest of the week. Environment Canada says daytime highs are expected near 30 degrees Celsius with overnight lows of up to 16 degrees Celsius. Forecasters say the heat is set to end next weekend. The city of Edmonton has activated its extreme weather response, opening recreation centers and libraries for people to beat the heat and hand out water bottles to those in need. If you've crossed the border from the U.S. back into Canada recently and thought the border agents didn't seem very happy, it's because they're not. A recent survey suggests employees at the Canada Border Services Agency and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service are the least likely to recommend their office as a great place to work. Overall, 2 in 3 public servants said yes when asked if they would recommend their department or agency as a great place to work. But at the CBSA and CSIS, less than half of employees surveyed said their departments were a great place to work. More than 186,000 employees were polled around the end of last year. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order that bans the burning of American flags, claiming this action incites riots.
What happens when you burn a flag is the area goes crazy. If you have hundreds of people, they go crazy. You could do other things. You can burn this piece of paper. But when you burn the American flag, it incites riots at levels that we've never seen before. People go crazy. And what the penalty is going to be, if you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail, no early exits, no nothing. You get 1 year in jail. If you burn a flag, you get, and what it does is incite to riot. I hope they used that language, by the way, did they? Yeah, incitement. Incite to riot. And you burn a flag, you get 1 year in jail.
Trump's advisors say the executive order would not run afoul of the First Amendment, which protects the freedom of speech, but they didn't expand on what that meant. For those walking through downtown Lethbridge, you'll notice the new revitalization project located right on the southwest corner of Galt Gardens Park. The aim of the art project is to make it look more colorful, safe, and welcoming. Crystal Scheit, urban revitalization manager with the city, says this is a collaborative effort between the city and University of Lethbridge with designs that highlight Indigenous culture.
So some of the things that were included in the project were some improved hardscaping, some natural stone seating, accessibility improvements to access the pergola area. There's a lot of events that happen throughout the summer in the park, as well as we upgraded the lighting within the pergola and around this area. I think the open sight lines and the improved lighting really makes it feel welcoming for people. The stone seating we've seen utilized a lot from Foodie Fest. When the food trucks line up, people really feel that they can come in and use the space, and it's very inclusive and welcoming to everyone. And just being able to bring in that cultural component, I think makes it feel like a very inclusive and welcoming space.
I just wanted to express how grateful I am and happy to have this opportunity to share this art with the city. My hope is that the public won't just see this piece as public art, but come to appreciate the Blackfoot language and the Blackfoot artwork and my community and our territory.
Highlights the city's commitment to reconciliation, right? One of our calls to action is to have more Indigenous spaces and more Indigenous art and culture within the city. So this just is an easy win for everybody, of course.
Students first came up with the project in fall of 2020, and in spring of 2021, they focused on one idea, improving the area around the pergola with designs that highlight Indigenous culture. In 2024, the city's Parks Department started planning upgrades to the area. Construction started in summer of 2024 and finished in the spring of 2025. A team of researchers at the Lethbridge Polytechnic have recently been finding new ways to conserve energy for greenhouse operations by using light optimization. The project compares industrial LEDs, horticultural LEDs, and high-pressure sodium lights on cucumbers, tomatoes, and bell peppers to determine the best climate conditions for the plants in an energy and cost-efficient setting. Dr. Saeed Hashemi says they have discovered some interesting results after preliminary results were shown coming from the Polytechnic's 10,000 square foot research greenhouse.
This trial was a 3-year trial, and after 1 year, our results showed that the best type of light is industrial LEDs, which is producing as much as traditional HPS lights, but with much less energy consumption, around 40% less energy consumption, which is causing a lot of economical and financial benefits for greenhouse growers in a commercial scale. We do have electrophysiology sensors to understand on how plants are feeling under different type of lights. So that stress will have direct effect on crop quality. So by adjusting and optimizing the climate condition in a way that plants can perform better and the fruit quality goes up, we will achieve our goals.
Greenhouses are reportedly already adopting results from the peer-reviewed trials on cucumbers. The trials are expected to finish late 2026. After the municipal district of Pincher Creek declared an agriculture state of disaster early this summer, the reeve for the district says the situation has turned around quite a bit for the good as harvest season arrives. The state of disaster was declared amid low snowpack and runoff to fill reservoirs and dugouts. But there has been enough precipitation this year to keep crops healthy.
Crops are relatively good. The harvest has started in and around the area. Some of the fields, though, have a lot of regrowth coming back, that the crop is finally germinated where it never did in the spring because of lack of moisture. So, yeah, no, the crops look good, and the second cut hay is going to be okay. We have had actually quite a bit of rain. Like, I do believe it varies from what I hear from 9 to 13 inches of rain since we declared, and that does help. It helps crops, of course. But it's not going to fill dugouts. I mean, dugouts are required for spring runoff with the snow in our creeks and that. So water's come up a little bit. It has eased the water situation, but I wouldn't say we're out of the woods yet with water. You know, when we get a good runoff, the dams fill and we can pump out of them at least and provide water. But this spring, there was none of that.
Area producers were left hauling water to their livestock as an effect from the local state of disaster. Out east, however, Cypress County also declared an agriculture state of disaster last month because of persisting dry conditions for crops. Cypress County is more susceptible to drier conditions than other regions in the province. Lethbridge police are asking for the public's help in locating a 25-year-old woman who is wanted on outstanding warrants. Kira Lind Eva Eliza Davarin is wanted on warrants for failing to comply with a release order stemming from drug trafficking charges. Anyone information on Davarin's whereabouts is asked to call police at 403-328-4444 or call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. Drivers in one Lethbridge neighborhood are going to have to adapt to some traffic changes as of this Wednesday. To improve the safety of students, families, and residents, the city is making changes in the Fleetwood neighborhood. So 11th Street South between 9th and 10th Avenue will change to one-way traffic going southbound, and 12th Street South between 9th and 10th will change to one-way traffic going northbound. The city's transportation engineering manager says it's all about safety.
Vision Zero is that we want to achieve a vision of zero serious injuries and fatalities in city of Lethbridge by 2040. We are also creating school travel plans as part of a major project funded by federal government. So all these initiatives are part of this overall big Vision Zero. We found that the circulation in the school wasn't great and people were complaining about traffic congestion, etc. We'll have message boards, but we haven't put them yet, but we will have electronic message boards saying, these streets have changed now. And we already put some A-frames message boards, you might notice them. And we have also, communicated with the parents of school through their school newsletter and individual letters with all the residents who are here.
The city says this will also improve pickup and drop-off of students at Fleetwood Bowden Elementary School. Signage is in place along the affected streets and will remain for approximately 2 weeks after the changes are made. Well, Sunday was a big day for Canadian women's golf. Brooke Henderson of Smiths Fall, Ontario beat Australia's Minjee Lee by a stroke to win the CPKC Women's Open for a second time. It's the 14th LPGA Tour of Henderson's tour title of Henderson's record-setting career and most victories by any Canadian professional golfer. It also ends a winless drought that stretched more than 2 years for Henderson.
This week was beyond special. To be able to finish it off and hoist the trophy again is extremely cool. It feels super surreal still. When I won in 2018, I woke up Monday morning thinking I still had to play the final round, so I'm wondering if that nightmare is going to happen again tomorrow. But honestly, it was just such a meaningful week. The crowds were phenomenal. To be able to play so well in front of them really means a lot to me too, and I'm so grateful for all of their support. This one, I think, might be the longest in between victories, so for that reason it makes it super special to be able to win the Canadian Open. The CPKC Women's Open for the second time is so special. So it's right up there near the top. I mean, I've always said that the 2018 win here was like a huge career highlight, and so to be able to do it again is just like such a bonus.
And congratulations to Brooke. From movies to the incredibly popular television series The Chosen, the story of the life of Jesus has been told in many ways over the years. Now, millions of people, including atheists and Muslims, are engaging with a unique series of animated Bible stories created with, of all things, Lego. We get details from Peter Wooding with the Global News Alliance.
A Christian animator is on a mission to tell the entire story of the Bible through Lego. Using stop motion, each Bible story takes 2 to 3 months to produce. And so far, Josh Whitehouse, the founder of Go Chatter Studios, says they've been able to create 12 of these. Josh explains more about the main aim of this unique project.
The heart behind this ministry is really wanting to make Jesus and the gospel known and as widely accessible and as freely accessible for as many people as we possibly can.
And already they're achieving this through the impact they're having on a wide range of their many millions of viewers.
If you look at our YouTube channel, for example, you'll see comments from loads of people, from parents of children, from the kids themselves. You'll see atheists and Muslims commenting on our videos, saying how much they enjoyed this Bible animation. It's one of the really amazing things about using Lego as a medium to tell Bible stories is that it's so accessible to such a wide audience.
And the long-term goal is to have completed 70 Bible stories in multiple languages in the next 5 years. Peter Wooding reporting for the Global News Alliance.
That looks so cute. I bet that takes forever to put together. Well, we are having some beautiful late August weather, and it's going to be a sweltering one this week with highs of 32 and 31 degrees Celsius. I will be right back with your full weather forecast. We reached a beautiful high of 31 degrees today, and it's going to remain nice and hot throughout the week. Look at that. Tomorrow on Tuesday, even warmer, 33 degrees. Sunshine all the way through, by the way, back to 31. Wednesday, Thursday, 29 on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday coming in at 28 degrees with partly cloudy skies. So how's that for our late August into September weather? Average highs For this time of year, 24, so we're coming in much higher than that. Average low, 9 degrees. 34 was the record high on this day. So not quite a heat breaker, a record breaker today, but that happened back in 1930 and again in 1970, 34 degrees. And then a low of 0, which was the record low in Lethbridge, and that happened back in 1980. So sun rose this morning at 6:36, sun set this evening at 8:30. So we're now in that 13-hour mark. So 13 hours, 54 minutes of daylight. Over on the west coast, Victoria, 25 degrees, cooler by the water, sunshine. Vancouver, warm, sunny, humid, high of 24. At 30 inland. We are still under that long duration heat event in Edmonton, which was under a heat warning today, with daytime highs up in the 30s, 31 tomorrow, with overnight lows hovering around 16 degrees. So that's what constitutes that heat warning, is that you don't get the cooler nights, it still stays warm. And then in Calgary, high of 29 tomorrow, sunshine, and they're still looking at also about the next 7 days of that heat event as well. Not quite the heat warning that Edmonton's seeing, but still very warm temperatures. Looking to the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon 31, 32 in Regina, and a high of 26 degrees in Winnipeg with clear skies all the way around. As we jump into the central part of the country, we're going to see a little bit of showers in Toronto, 30% there. 21 for the high, 22 in Ottawa with mainly cloudy skies. Montreal coming in at 21 tomorrow, could see 30% chance of showers there as well. Looking into the East Coast, we are seeing more moisture for sure on the East Coast at 30%, 60% chance rather. 24 for the high in Fredericton, 60% chance of showers, 30% in Halifax, high of 23, 24 in Charlottetown with intermittent periods of showers throughout the day. St. John's, heavy rainfall, 20 to 30 millimeters, high 21 degrees, and 30 to 60 kilometer per hour winds. There you have it. That is your forecast. Air Canada customers looking to file a complaint with the regulator over their experience during the flight attendant strike should prepare themselves for a wait. The Canadian Transportation Agency says its backlog of air travel complaints stood at about 85,000 as of August 14th, 2 days before the strike started. The backlog has been growing since the federal government passed rules that came into effect in 2019 that set compensation amounts for flight delays, cancellations, and the like. The CTA says that in the 2024-25 fiscal year, it closed more than 33,000 complaints, a sharp increase from previous years, but not enough to reduce the growing backlog. Canada's Auditor General will study the troubled attempt to modernize the federal government's pay system. The Phoenix pay system began processing public servants' pay in 2016, and problems began to show up almost immediately. It resulted in widespread errors on employees' paychecks and delays in payments. Ottawa announced in June it had awarded a 10-year contract to Dayforce for almost $351 million to replace Phoenix. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 163 points on the day to finish at 28,169. The Dow was down 349 to 45,282. The S&P 500 was down 27 points to 6,439, and the Nasdaq was down 47 to 21,449. West Texas Intermediate oil was up $1.08 to $64.74 US per barrel. Natural gas was up a cent to $2.71 US. Gold was down $7.22 to $33.65.90 US an ounce, and silver was down 34 cents to $38.56 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.21 per bushel, barley is at $5.66, canola is at $15.10, and corn is at $7.52 per bushel. Live cattle are up 27 cents to $2.40.22. Feeder cattle were up 50 cents to $3.60.85, and lean hogs October contract was up 20 cents to $91.40. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours and currently sits at $72.20 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Alberta is looking into the possibility of a nuclear future. The government says exploring nuclear energy is about ensuring Albertans have access to dependable, emissions-free power that can support families, businesses, and communities for generations. A 5-member panel with experience in industry, academia, and Indigenous government will lead the investigation. Regular Albertans can share their thoughts in an online survey. Last week, U.S. President Donald Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky separately, leaving the world to ask the question, can peace be achieved between these two countries? Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will give us the scoop on this and other international stories coming up next. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews. How soon could there be a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, particularly after all the talks that have been happening lately? Also, we are recently learning that the country of Jordan is teaching its school children that the October 7th attack on Israel was justified. It's interesting because Jordan has had a peace treaty with Israel since 1994. So here to discuss this and a whole lot of other things is our foreign affairs correspondent, Lisa Daftari. She is the editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk and joins us from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome back.
Thank you so much. So nice to be here with you.
Great. Okay, so Lisa, since we last spoke, a lot has happened. So President Trump met in person with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, and then he met separately with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House, along with other European leaders. So let's talk a little bit about where things are at right now with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Are we getting anywhere close to peace talks? How close are we to a ceasefire?
You know, your guess is as good as mine. You asked in your intro, how soon can we see a ceasefire? And I guess the answer would be not soon enough. This has really dragged on for years, a very senseless war of our times. And, you know, it's interesting because with the Trump administration, Donald Trump campaigned on stopping this war right away. Obviously, again, calling it a senseless war, you know, citing the casualties and citing the amount of money and resources that have gone into this to support the Ukrainian defense against Russia with really no avail. They've been able to push them back a bit, but they've also been dragging this on, right? So the question becomes, what is the most opportune moment to say, you know, enough is enough? I mean, the sanctions are working against Russia, but, you know, what will it take? A better question, what will it take to stop the Russian madman Putin from, you know, carrying on with this war over and over again? So as you referenced, Donald Trump did meet directly with the Russians. He did speak to Putin. He also has met with Zelensky on several occasions and has basically said to him, you know, I'll tell you what to do, but I will end this war and we will see better days ahead. So in the meantime, you know, it's just carrying on, and we've seen escalations since we've been talking about the ceasefire. So that really is the big question here, is that when can we see a de-escalation of this? What will it look like? And in the meantime, will there be that threat of nuclear material entering this war, Russia escalating once again, and really having the final say, which Putin likes to do?
Yeah, you mentioned things are escalating even. You know, for example, a Russian missile strike in western Ukraine last Thursday, and it hit an electronics factory owned by a U.S.-based company. It sounds like the Americans aren't necessarily happy about this one, but Vice President J.D. Vance told NBC's Meet the Press that he remains confident that the U.S. can broker an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine, and he believes that they've already seen some significant concessions from both sides.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a positive sign if the White House is speaking that way. I don't think they would overpromise on this one. It's just not something that this administration does with regards to foreign policy. We've seen them under promise and over deliver, which is their brand. Love them or hate them, that's what we've seen. I mean, that's been the pattern here. With regards to Russia and Ukraine, you're right, we have seen escalations and ones that affect the United States. But what I believe many are looking at this is just a tit for tat, a retaliation from Russia for the jet fighters that were hovering overhead when Putin and Trump did meet, which was kind of a little bit of an American brand flex, if you will, to establish deterrence, to establish, the leverage, and to say, here's how it's going to go. We have the upper hand. You should listen to us here. And that's really what has been the American position here, is to say, we want this to end and we will do what it takes, whether it's unilaterally or multilaterally. If we do have partners or if we don't have partners, we will find a way to isolate Russia, to make them know that there will be consequences if they don't end this war, and then try to end it in the most peaceful way possible. So hence the optimism coming from J.D. Vance. We do hope that we see that come to fruition sometime soon.
Yeah, and then when you mentioned U.S. flexing its muscles, are you referring to the U.S. fighter jets that intercepted a Russian aircraft off of Alaska? It happened, I guess, 3 times in a week. Can you give us a little bit of details of what happened there?
That separately.
Okay, it's separate.
Yes, and that did happen. Yes, okay. So this happened both for show and obviously for pragmatic reasons, right?
Yeah.
This happened while they were meeting. They met, in Alaska. This was really something to show American might. A lot of people alluded to it and said, how funny that the Trump administration would do such a thing to someone like Putin, who is really the master of putting on shows and really showing his might. So really, it was a taste of his own medicine, so to speak, in that regard. Now, with really our defense mechanism against this has also been put into gear, and I think that in and of itself shows that the United States is not going to take anything from Russia, but they don't want to escalate either. So we're really brushing that away. We're blocking them where we need to. We're sending the message to Moscow that this is not going to be the way that it goes down. But in the meantime, we do appreciate how the White House has been very focused on getting that ceasefire and not escalation, or not responding to Putin in a way that Putin actually wants. That's the reason for these provocations, is that Putin wants to really have the final say in all of these different conflicts. So whether it's dealing with the United States, dealing with Zelensky, dealing with the Ukraine issue, it's going to be very challenging to deal with someone like Putin. But in the meantime, the sanctions are working. We're trying to speak to partners who are dealing with Russia directly, like India, like China, who are helping them to find loopholes and to sell, whatever it is to bring in money and to work around the sanctions. So this is something that it has to have global support, and if they don't, the Russians will find a way. And I think as long as this war rages on, there will be more senseless deaths and damage. And again, that threat of nuclear material entering the conversation is still on the table.
Oh, wow. Okay, this one a little off that topic, more about anti-Semitism. Okay, so American ambassador to Paris, Charles Kushner, has written a letter to French President Emmanuel Macron alleging that the country has not done enough to combat anti-Semitism. Now, France's foreign ministry has summoned Kushner to address his allegations, calling them unacceptable. So, and just an interesting side note here is that Charles Kushner is the father of President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who is married to Ivanka. So what can you tell us about that roundabout situation there?
So yes, Charles Kushner did get this position. He is actually the child of Holocaust survivors, and he's not wrong. That's the bottom line. He's not wrong, regardless of his background, being Jewish, not being Jewish. He's not wrong. France has a major jihadi problem and a major anti-Semitism problem. The hate crimes that go on daily in France against Jews, being beaten up, rabbis being targeted, school children being targeted. There was recently a busload of Israeli children, tourists, over 100 of them, who went into a water park, and the owner of the water park denied them access because they were Jewish. There is a major problem. So instead of addressing it, what do the French people do? They summon the guy who actually says there is a problem. So they're targeting the person who's pointing it out instead of acknowledging that there's a problem, doing something about it. But I will say this, it will not start and stop with the Jews. There is a major jihadi problem in France, and if they don't get in front of it, I mean, it might already be too late. But there is a radicalism problem, and radicalism does not just target Jews for the moment. That is where their focus is on, but they will target French people. They will burn French flags. They will, we're going to have a very I should say we already do, but it will be an even more, existential crisis for the French people. And I want to remind people that the French people have 0 to 2 children at most. This is, national average is very low on childbearing. Those who have come there, and I'm not saying they're all jihadis, but the ones who are having multiple children. So they are also outnumbering the French who are, again, defending them in this moment when you have Charles Kushner trying to point out a problem that could be worked on. And I think Charles Kushner is also saying, I'll be a partner in helping you really de-radicalize and to work against Jew hatred in your country. I think they should take him up on the offer.
Well, good luck with that, though, especially if they're starting to outnumber people. Here's an interesting one, Lisa, and I alluded to it in the intro here. So an investigation into Jordan's school curriculum has revealed textbooks published since 2023 that legitimize Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel and advocate the ethnic cleansing of Israelis. And Jordan has had a peace treaty with Israel since 1994. So why would they teach their children ideologies that go against what their government has committed to?
Right. And I think you said the optimal word is ideology, and that's exactly what this is. Look, we talk a lot about, in my line of work, we talk about, the innocent Palestinians, the innocent, the moderate Arab world. And there are many people who fall into that category, people who want better, people who don't want to dedicate their lives to blowing themselves up in the name of jihad. They don't want to dedicate their lives to taking Israel off the map. They want normal lives, they want prosperity, and they want a future. And we saw that in the Abraham Accords, right? People from places like Bahrain and the UAE and Morocco, and the list goes on. And there are many others in Saudi and in Jordan and in Lebanon who have very, very modern outlook, and they want the Middle East to be just like the West and to do away with radicalism. Yet, there is still this component within society. It's systematic that they are teaching their children exactly these tropes that keep them in the dark ages. Their math books, whether it's, we saw the UNRWA math books, and UNRWA, again, is the UN organization that is entrusted with passing out supplies and taking care of the Palestinian people. There were UNRWA textbooks, that means taxpayer-funded textbooks that were teaching math to young children by saying, if I kill 2 Jews today and I kill 2 tomorrow, how many have I taught in total? How many have I killed in total? So they're teaching math through the killing of Jews. And now you have, Jordan, a nation that, again, like you said, has peace, is moderate, we believe. We want to believe they're moderate. We want to believe that they are not stuck in these really age-old tropes that keep them, victimized and keep them, hating and teaching their children to hate rather than to teach coexistence and to teach peace, the way we see in other places in the Middle East, like Israel. This is an interesting way to keep the people down and to continue this ideology for generations to come. There will be, and I say this all the time, and I'll end with this, Jeanette, because I've gone on too long for this, but there will be no future of the Middle East unless they can do away with this ideology. This is the ideology that stands in the way of prosperity, in the way of Westernism, in the way of coexistence with Israel and having peace and prosperity for the future.
Wow, we're out of time here, but Editor-in-Chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari, thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Have you ever wished you could fly in a hot air balloon? It does look pretty amazing to see those giant balloons silently and majestically floating by, high in the sky. Today's guest spent decades as a local pastor, but also decades flying balloons. And he's here to share some of his experiences with us today. Joining us from Taber, Alberta is Dale Lang. He was the winner of the first Canadian Hot Air Balloon Championship in 1979. And he has a new book out called On Eagle's Wings, The North Pole and 50 Years of Other Ballooning Misadventures. Dale, great to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
So you've got some great stories in this book. Tell us what sparked your interest to learn to fly a hot air balloon.
Well, it really began when I was a child. I ended up having a number of dreams when I was in the 10, 11-year-old range, where I would just walk out the back door of my parents' home and lift off the ground and float around the neighborhood. It's quite an amazing dream, and I really enjoy the sensation of it. And that led me to not thinking about it that much during those next few years, but I saw a balloon fly in Calgary, 1973. And as I watched that balloon fly, I said, man, I really, really want to do that. I'd like to fly a balloon. So Export A Cigarettes, as it was the company that was sponsoring this particular balloon in those days. And they had a balloon event in Riley Park, and my wife and I went down to it. We watched these balloons lift off, and we followed them out to the countryside where they landed. And that was pretty much the point in time in which I was sold on the idea that I had to go up in a balloon. I had to try this. Really wasn't so interested in being a passenger. I really felt I wanted to be a pilot. So from there, I got going.
Tell us, what is it like to be just floating high up in the air? Was it anything like those dreams you were having?
Yes, it was. The thing about ballooning that I find most interesting is that most of us like to fly fairly low. So we can go across the countryside very slowly. We pick leaves off trees. We talk to the people on the ground. We can do water touch and goes, which we call splash and dashes. And you can see so much from the sky. The sensation of floating is really quite unusual. Most aircraft are moving through the air, and we're moving with the air. So it's a very different experience. And I've been doing it for over 50 years, so it is one that I guess I'd have to recommend.
So how long does it take to learn to fly a balloon then?
The in Canada, the number of hours required is 16 hours of flying time. That would include 2 half-hour solo flights at the end of that training period. There are a couple of exams that need to be written and a medical that needs to be passed as well.
And once you're up in the air, how high can these balloons go and how far?
Well, basically, what limits a hot air balloon rising in altitude eventually is the loss of oxygen. But most hot air balloons would easily be able to get up to about 20,000 feet if they were trying to. You're not supposed to go above that altitude unless you have oxygen on board. 12.5 is the altitude at which you're not supposed to be above that without oxygen. Like I say, during the training program, you do have to make one ascent to 10,000 feet above sea level. But most of our flying is done at much lower levels.
So for someone that wants to get involved in or wants to pilot or fly a hot air balloon, what are the first steps?
Well, these days it's much easier than when I started off. I ended up having to go to the States to get my training, but you would contact a licensed balloonist who is also got an instructor's rating. And then they would set up with you the timing and all the rest of it, and you would start to do some flying. There's also 10 hours of ground school required. So you go through the process of getting your 16 hours in, your ground school in. You write your exams and pass those, and then Transport Canada will issue you a hot air balloon pilot's license.
Now, can you share a bit about the story about being the first to fly a hot air balloon over the North Pole? That sounds a bit crazy.
Well, it was pretty interesting. It was back in 1977, actually. And a fellow that I'd taught to fly balloons had a little advertising balloon in Calgary. He had this scheme to go to the North Pole and do the first balloon hop over the North Pole. It's a long story. I'll give you the short version. We ended up taking Twin Otters up to Ellesmere Island, which is the most northerly island in Canada. We were camped there for a couple of days at a little fishing camp, a log cabin kind of a place. And then we took the Twin Otter out to the North Pole, the vicinity of the North Pole. That was before GPSs were involved in life. And so getting right to the North Pole was a bit more tricky. Also, we had to make sure that we had the kind of ice conditions that the Twin Otter could land on. We found a spot very close to where the actual geographical North Pole would be. We marked it with a parachute, and the parachute had arrows on it pointing in all directions, and all the directions were south. So we got the balloon out of the Twin Otter, we inflated it. The fellow who had organized this whole thing was supposed to go up with his wife. And after he inflated the balloon, he told me that he'd frozen a finger on the inflating of the balloon. And so he asked me to hop in the basket and fly the balloon. So I did. It was a very short flight. We flew over the vicinity of the North Pole, then landed again. Therefore, being the first balloonist to ever fly over the actual North Pole. There's a lot about that adventure that I don't have time to tell you, but it was a pretty exciting time. And it's kind of strange to stand on the ground, in this case, the ice, and whatever direction you looked, you were looking south. Well, that just was so weird.
Right. Wow. Now, flying hot air balloons does carry some risks with it. Do you have any close calls that you can share with us?
Well, there's a lot, I suppose. I did, in my very first year flying, I took up a parachutist, a fellow who was doing his 1,000th jump, and he wanted to do something a little more unusual. So I took him up in the balloon. I was a very green pilot. This was near Claire's home. We went up to a little over 5,000 feet above the ground, and I started the balloon descending because when I lose his weight, it was good to be descending and not ascending. So he jumped over the side, and I watched him drop and drop and drop. I thought his parachute didn't open, but finally it opened. It was about the size of my thumbnail, and he landed safely. Before I could get back down to the ground, the wind came up. And another long story made short, I had to land the balloon at a little bit over about close to 60 kilometers an hour, which is pretty fast for a balloon. Got down safely. The basket plowed up a lot of dirt in the field, finally stopped moving, and I got out and it was all good. Probably my worst ballooning experience ever, however, was the day I was training a student and he was soloing. We were here in Tabor. The weather looked excellent. The forecast was great. And so we went out to do this flight, and he took off, and the wind just started to pick up. And out of nowhere, out of no forecasted wind at all, we ended up with about 30 knot winds, which is about 40 miles an hour or 50 kilometers an hour. And he ended up having to land that balloon in that condition, and it was pretty rough. He wasn't hurt. He gets bruised and battered, but no broken bones. It was a challenging situation because I wasn't even in the balloon, and so I was frustrated that I couldn't be there to sort of help out. Anyhow, he survived. However, the balloon then went airborne for another 3 or 4 kilometers before we finally got to it and it came down. A little bit of damage done, but I was able to repair that and we carried on. But that was probably the most negative experience that I ever had in my ballooning career.
It does look so peaceful, but people don't realize like how dangerous it could be if the conditions are bad too. What were the early days of flying balloons like compared to today's modern balloons?
Well, that's a good question. The early days were a steep learning curve for most of us because the reality was that we knew some things about weather, but we didn't know as much as we thought we knew. So there was a lot of learning to be done, and hopefully you get through that without too many bumps and bruises. The equipment has been improved quite a bit in the last 50 years. So the balloons are very safe, well-built machines. They'll protect you on landing, and they can take a lot of bumping around. But the key factor is always going to be weather. And we all know how unpredictable the weather can be sometimes. And despite all the computer models and all the forecasts that are made, they can be wrong. So you have to be careful when you go out to do a flight. you've got all your weather information, you've checked everything. You now do a visual check. You make sure that everything looks good. Most of the time, we let go a small helium balloon, a toy balloon, that we let go to watch it fly through the different currents as it rises. And that can tell us both the direction and the speed that we're going to be flying in. And so we do is we do whatever we can to check ahead of time. And of course, even during the flight, you are watching any changes in the weather that might happen. So you can do a lot of good flying safely. You just got to be very aware of the weather. And most of that flying is done in the mornings and the evenings when the air mass is the most stable and the winds are the lightest.
Oh, that's why when I see a hot air balloon, it's usually like in the morning, early in the morning when so there's a reason behind that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the as the day progresses, what happens is we get what we call thermic air movement, where because the surface of the Earth is different colors, some areas will heat up quicker than others, and that's what creates dust devils and that sort of thing. And so once you get past in the summertime, much past 9:30, those things kind of start to form up, and the winds pick up, and it's more unstable. So we avoid flying past say 10 o'clock in the morning most of the time during the summer.
Now, as I said in our opening, you spent decades as a pastor. Were there any spiritual lessons you've learned from all these decades of ballooning?
Well, that could be a pretty significant topic. I guess, first of all, I would say this, that life is always an adventure, not always an easy adventure. We all go through challenges and difficult times. And so the reality for me is that the ballooning is kind of a mimic or a model of that, because I'm going to get into this aircraft. I know certain things about it and I've checked the weather, but I still have no guarantee of what's going to happen. I'm going to be flying. I'm not even sure of the direction sometimes, and sometimes that direction changes. It's much like life, and I feel like that's very much the spiritual lesson, because as I've dedicated my life to following Jesus, I found that I really need his guidance, and I don't always know what I'm doing or exactly where I'm going. But so far, and I'm sure for the rest of my life, he gets me there safely.
Yeah, you very much are in God's hands once you're airborne. What advice do you have for anyone watching who has a desire to learn to fly balloons?
Well, I think the thing I would say is that you should probably check in with a few local balloon pilots. In my day, I had to go to the States to find a pilot who could even teach me. There was nobody in this area at that time. Um, you want to check with the pilots. You want to talk about the details and how it's going to work out. You want to make sure you're going to be working with a credible instructor. And if you hang out with some of the balloonists in the area for a little while, you'll hear and you'll know what's going on, and who the people are to that you would choose to maybe give you the instruction you need to learn to fly a balloon. Um, it certainly has been a wonderful 50 years for me, and I would certainly recommend to anybody who has any inkling at all that would like to go flying. I'm reminded of a thing that a lady said on a passenger flight I did in Lethbridge a few years ago. We took off. We were flying across Lethbridge. She was there with her husband, and some of their grown children were there. And it was a beautiful, beautiful evening. And we flew out across West Lethbridge, and we were heading back into the river valley just west of town. And she sort of was staring out into space, and we had one of those moments where everybody was quiet. And she just stood there and she said, "I have never felt this peaceful ever before in my life." And I'd heard people talk about feeling peaceful in the balloon, but to say that was pretty kind of amazing. But it actually can be very true that when you're in a hot air balloon, you're just floating along and all your worries are gone, and what you have in front of you is just this beautiful view, and it's just so peaceful and calm. So that was kind of interesting.
Dale Lang is the author of On Eagle's Wings, The North Pole, and 50 Years of Other Ballooning Misadventures. Dale, thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. I appreciate being able to share with you.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.